Hey, we're going to make a tool to make cobblestone streets in HO scale. But first we need some flame. I'm using this blowtorch. It's probably excessive. You can probably use a smaller little tiny butane lighter, which will work just as well. But this is what I got in the shop, so that's what we're going to use. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So we're working in HO scale, so you're going to need to find a paintbrush you can sacrifice. And it needs to be a flat paintbrush, not a round paintbrush. So you can see the profile changes there. And this is about a little over an 1/8 inch wide. And we need to remove these bristles. So put it in some kind of clamp. You don't want it to move. Any kind of little vise will do. And if you have something non-flammable, use that as a table. This is a welding table, so of course we're safe. Do it outside where there's air, and do it with a fire extinguisher nearby. Of course, like I said, this is excessive, but it'll do the job. Of course, don't touch that without your gloves on. And now hopefully we have a hollow metal stamping tool. So as I said, we're doing this in HO scale. So if you do it in a larger scale like O scale, you'll need something twice as wide. This is about an 1/8 inch across, which is about the right scale for cobblestone in HO. And of course it needs to be a flat brush, not a round brush, because we're trying to get that brick shape. And we need to tweak it a little bit to get out the rounded sides, so we can squeeze a little bit with some pliers. If there's any material left inside from when you melted the bristles, you can get it out with a blade. So it does take some poking and prodding to get as close to a rectangle shape as possible. The sides are still going to be a little bit round, but for the overall effect it's not going to matter. But that's basically what you want, is this hollow paintbrush. And then take a nice bright colored paint marker. Just mark it up so you know it's not a paintbrush. So this is Sculpey. This is air dry Sculpey clay. Take a nice chunk out of there. And we're just making patches of cobblestone that we're going to pave around, so you don't need too much. And we need it flat. And you can use a spackle knife to kind of flatten it and get it nice and thin, but this is a pasta roller, and you could steal one of those from your kitchen maybe, and then just roll in the clay. You can adjust the thickness over here. I'm making it about 3/32 of an inch thick. Now I have a nice piece to work with. Now we can cut this into a manageable piece we can work with. Put that aside. So now we could use our tool to start stamping our cobblestones. You could draw a line in there, but I don't think you need to. The tool itself will kind of be a guide. When you get to the next row, stagger them, just like bricks. So what you'll realize is that you can lose your way a little bit with the staggering, but once you catch up again, the overall look is not going to matter, and its irregularities is what makes it kind of nice. So don't worry about them lining up or not. So now I can take this, we're going to let this dry. So technically we need to wait 24 hours for this to dry, but of course we're making this video in a much shorter time than that, so we're going to see if we can dry it with a heat gun. So that was about a minute and a half or 2 minutes of drying with the heat gun. And it's still flexible, which is actually okay because we do want to cut it. So we're just going to make a sample street on this piece of plywood here. So I'm actually going to take 2 sections. Let's use this over here. Use that there. So I'm going to secure each piece with some wood glue. Now if you made a larger section of this, maybe the width of a street and about 1.5 inches wide, you could let it dry, seal it with a nice gloss sealer, and then make a silicone mold of it, and then you can make as many of these road sections as you like, casting them in hydrocal or plaster. Before we apply our paving material, we're going to color these, at least stain them. And I've got to mix a wash of alcohol and ink. So I've defined an area that we'll stick to pave. And for paving, I'm using pre-mixed grout. This is charcoal, which is an important distinction. There's a light gray, you don't want to use that, you want to use this. This, it looks like pavement. So we're going to apply it with a palette knife. I might need a larger one, but I'm going to start small. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? Put that back. I don't know if this helps. I think it does. I'm going to score this up a bit to get a little bite. So I think it'll prevent the grout from sliding around too much. So this is great stuff to use just as straight paving. And also for this, I can bring it up to my cobblestones. So at some point the small palette knife won't work as well, and I'm going to use a wider one, but I'm also dipping it in water, because as you work this will start to dry, and to get a smoother finish the water helps. And the edge that meets the cobblestone you want as thin as you can get in HO scale. Anything over a 32nd of an inch is going to be too big of a pothole. Now once this dries, you can sand it. So if there's any bumps that you don't like, I wouldn't worry too much about it. We can always go back and fix that. And of course we can add some vegetation for little cracks and stuff, which we'll do. We can start painting the cobblestone. So I've got some water over here, and I'm going to use to dip my brush in, and then take some of this medium gray to make kind of a gray wash, because this is still too light for cobblestone. So I'm going to work this in there, trying not to soak it too much. And already I like this gray better than just the stained alcohol and ink version. Yeah, that's much better. So it may sound crazy to use blue on this, but I'm going to mix some of this gray with a little bit of blue. With a little bit of blue here, because these blocks are granite, and sometimes they do have a blue tint to them. If it doesn't work, we'll just put some more gray over it, but a little bit of blue will help. So I really want the lines between the cobblestones to show up. I could use an alcohol and ink wash, but this panel liner, black panel liner from Tamiya, seems to be a much thinner viscosity material and a blacker black. So I'm going to try that. Let's try it on a small patch first. Yeah, this just draws into the lines between the blocks a lot better. Let's try it on the big patch. It's So now we need to give this a sort of worn look, and to do that I use dust and dirt deposits, which I use for almost everything. And I'm thinning it down with some mineral spirits in my dirty jar here. Let that dry. So I've just brushed some black weathering powder down the center lines of the traffic, and now I'm adding a little bit of gray powder just to dull it down a little bit, do a little more blending. At this point you could add some cracks if you like with a knife. Now with a little bit of white glue and a toothpick, we can add a little bit of vegetation to those cracks. Not a lot, mostly to the edges of the road. A couple in the middle. So I've got some fine green foam here. I'm going to mix it up. I've got some flock and turf over here. It's got little polyfibers in it, different colors. And then just blow it away. And now we've got some weeds coming out of our cracks. So this is just another way to make cobblestones. There's plenty of ways to do it. Of course, you can carve them into plaster. We have a video on that as well. And if you do make a nice section, again, you can make a mold and make a repeat of it, so you don't have to keep making all these patterns. So just make one pattern and cast it into hydrocal, and you can make roads all day long. Thanks again to our Patreon supporters here. If you want to see more content, more photos, more behind the scenes stuff, more sneak peeks to kits we're working on, and we also post exclusive videos that we only put on Patreon. Check us out there, and check out fosskits.com to see over 100 HO scale kits that you might be interested in, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.